Welcome to the Borth podcast, where fresh thinking meets financial freedom. Each week, we explore ideas that challenge old habits and light the way to a stronger financial future. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the Borth podcast. I am excited today. I can't even explain my level of excitement. Today, I get Mr. David Zapata back on the podcast. He's been a frequent visitor to this podcast. You've heard his story. If you haven't, it's worth a listen. Go back and find the episode where David tells his life story about how he came to this country with the shoes on your feet and the shirt on your back, and your dad with some principles of how to live a life, and how he's really growing and finding abundance in his life in this world. So today we're going to talk about, we have a number of different things that we want to kind of bring together. We've talked about in the past episodes, we've talked about the idea of Factum Tough Money, which is just a framework and a discussion about how you think about money and how you have a closer relationship with your money. So, and now today, and probably the next couple of episodes past this, what we want to do is bring some illustration to those ideas of how we can be using dollars. Because again, we start with the idea that money has to flow. And I've done previous podcasts talking about the flow of money, but money has to flow. And when it flows, there's only certain things we can do with it. And where we shine and where we bring true benefit to our clients is that we live in that foundational piece of savings and holding dollars and holding it in the right place. And if you love where you're saving money, you're going to save a ton more money. And when you save a ton more money, it brings liquidity to your family. Great. So today we're going to talk about what can we do if we have, or if we're working on saving, a saving strategy and saving money in the right place, what can we do with that? So we're going to talk about that today. So David, I'll kind of let you have your own intro. Thanks again for joining me today, because this is exciting. This is we had one client call this, how did he say it again?
The first on that vacation. Yeah. Thank you for having me, Wade. It's always a pleasure to have conversation with you. I'm very excited as well to have this conversation and share it with your audience. This will be, to me, how do we marry the principles that we teach people in terms of the mindset on how we have a relationship with money, things that we learned were from Nelson Nash in Becoming Your Own Banker. First part of the book is all about mindset, and then how to incorporate that into a process and products that we can bring together to actually create the outcomes we're seeking. I want to have a relationship with money in order to have abundance with my kids, spiritually, personally, with my community, my profession. So very aligned with our 5 areas conversation. And for those that have not seen the Tough Money curriculum, I got to tell you, please get a hold of us. We would be happy to share this with you. It is the foundation for how we have a close relationship with money. The idea that we have an intentional saving strategy, debt strategy, that we can translate that into our balance sheet with proper liquidity and foundation, and that we can then rebalance and harmonize that with our investments in the service of creating cash flow to increase our income and keep the wheel going effectively for our family, for our business. The number one piece of feedback we hear after we complete some of this education with clients is this: I wish I would have learned these principles when I was younger. Younger always being before. And we hear that loud and clear. So we feel this urgency to bring this to everyone that, is interested in really taking a serious look at quality education for financial management that you will not have in schools, that you will not find in college, that likely you may not find in an MBA, honestly. Yeah. It is a very different way to think about money with very simple ideas. So please get a hold of us. We'll be happy to share. Now, we have, I think, 12 ideas, Wade, that we're going to discuss over a series of podcasts. And I think for the podcast today, we're going to talk about 4 outcomes. And I want to bring them up quickly. And I would love for us to dive into a conversation into how tough money principles and these ideas merge, harmonize, and what those outcomes could look like for someone like you based on our experience. So yeah. For those, please go ahead.
Once we've started this idea of like introducing this tough money ideas, like I didn't know I needed that until I saw it.
Yeah.
And that to me was a real eye opener or ear opener, or however you're seeing this or listening to this. Think about that. It's like when people are saying, I didn't realize what I needed until I saw it. That's the tough money conversation that a lot of people don't know they need until they've seen it and they go, that's what I've been looking for. That's where I feel there's a hole, or I sense there's a hole in my abundance in my life, is like financially, I don't have that pathway. So yeah. I've heard that said as well. So I'll let you go, because what you're going to do is you're just going to run through the kind of the 12 different ideas that we're going to be talking about with the next couple of series of podcasts, because we want to let everybody know that it's not just one area. It's like, what is it that you personally are feeling
or sensing in your life that this could help. And so we want to throw out at least 12 ideas, and there could be a bunch more. We know there's a bunch more, but these are the 12 that we're running into on a regular basis.
This is a perfect segue to do the introduction properly using some of our principles. So I saw it as a very interesting piece of feedback. And it's really interesting because the way we introduce this at the beginning of the training is we give people different areas of their financial life and we ask them two questions. Which one is more comfortable, more familiar to you, and which ones do you need more education and more comfort with? And typically we will list things like tax strategies, estate planning, property and casualty insurance, life insurance, all these things we list from a family office mindset, let's call it. And financial management typically makes the top of the list when people talk about comfort. And yet, when they go through this training, the realization is, I didn't know I needed this until I saw it. And this program makes you the author of a business plan that you can execute for your relationship with money moving forward. But you are the author, you are the quarterback of this. And this is in recognition at Factum that we understand two things. At the foundation level, regardless of if you earn $100,000 or $50,000 or $10 million a year, it doesn't matter. You need proper foundation that likely looks similar to most people. Proper protections and insurances, proper estate planning, proper protection of asset, proper taxes, strategies, a savings plan, financial education, financial awareness. That looks the same whether you're Bill Gates or Elon Musk or you and I. The acceleration piece of your wealth, when you're talking about cash flow management, investments, even the definition of freedom itself needs to be unique to you. Only you know what's in your heart to know what's best for you, for your family, for your business. So when we introduce this program, we allow people to learn frameworks, to think through things and decide, you know what, for my liquidity weight, I'm comfortable with 180 days of liquid assets. I'm comfortable with 360. I'm comfortable with 13, 15, 20 years. There's no right or wrong, but it needs to be how you do cash flow management so you can deploy that cash however you have your skill set, values, interest in your life. It's unique to you. So now to connect this to the comments I was going to make, when we give you these ideas, please recognize that not all of this will resonate with you, but maybe one or two will be things that become visions to say, I would really like to accomplish these outcomes. And now it makes sense to connect with some foundations that I can learn myself and also be the leader to teach other people around me.
I think there's a real, there's a real sense of, how really what we're trying to do is help you to become a good leader with find a good leader with your own family. And again, it's not us leading; it's empowering you to become that leader. That because you need to lead yourself, and you need to lead your finances, you need to lead your family, and all those areas you have to have that leadership development. And that's really what we're talking about: is how do we give you the tools and the framework and the conversation to become that leader that you know you can become.
Well, let's jump into four ideas that we can discuss in this episode. I'm going to list them all and then let's just go in order and have some thoughts about how we see the harmony and the connection in all these principles. The first idea we're going to discuss is a very popular one. How do we go about building a family banking system? This is at the core of a lot of conversations with infinite banking concept, a lot of the conversations that a lot of business owners want to create, integration of their families and their businesses. So how do we build a family banking system is the first idea we're going to talk about, and we're going to connect it to tough money principles. Number two, how do we keep $1 million within our control when we buy or finance vehicles as individuals? There's a better way. So we're going to discuss how do we do that in our family for every individual in our family. If you have a large family, the problem is larger than you think. So we're going to talk about that. Number three, idea number three. How do we source debt as a family and understand the different quality of debt sourcing and the ability to remain in control of that debt? Debt is good. And when debt is good, that is not so good when it's not going good, right? It can be good or it can be bad. So in a world where we live, where some of the prominent gurus are saying never go into debt, and some other gurus are saying debt and go and loan against your mother, right? The truth likely is in the middle, is a spectrum. And for all of us is different. So how do we create a framework where when we're going to use leverage, when we know and understand investments, for example, how do we do it in a way that we can keep more control? It's a very important conversation. Number four, if we want to create legacy and significant, a lot of families, a lot of business see charitable donations as a way to create meaningful impact in society. What if we can marry principles of tough money, of infinite banking, into doing it in a way that's more impactful, more significant, because we understand how to finance it more effectively? So let's have that conversation.
It's a good start, David. I'm excited to get into all these, but I want to go back and just touch on something that you mentioned. It's us helping you, empowering you through education. And that's the real beauty. It's about awareness and education. It's like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Not just thinking of it that way. Now you can't unsee that. And now let's bring some additional education to that thought process. That's really always our intent as an education company. We want to educate people to a level of curiosity to say, okay, how does this apply in my life?
Yeah.
And then once you start asking that question, then we can bring in some knowledge and understanding from our standpoint and from what we do on a regular basis. And that's really our approach, is like, it's always about what are we doing to get you to see things that maybe a little bit differently. And then once you recognize what you want, where you want to go and how you want to go there, then say, hey, David, you're the expert map maker in my life. How do we get there? So I'm excited but I want to put that framework out there, and then also understand that our education is we have a lot of different resources. We have videos, we have workbooks, we have individual conversations. There's a lot of different ways we can bring education to people as they go through this stuff. So just know that what we're talking about, where we're going, is very superficial, but we just want to bring out these ideas so you can start imagining how this might work in your family.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything starts with a seed, right? We're not putting the oak in front of you. We're putting a seed, and you need to decide which seed is the one that you want to plant in your garden. We not only have the education, but we have the experience and the expertise to guide you and help you implement these things, because education without action means nothing. It's just entertainment. So the point of this is that if you truly want to see a family banking systems with your children participating in it, with your parents or your extended family participating on it in a meaningful way, you need to work with folks that have the experience and the expertise to help you implement that education and the processes, tools, and mindset in every member so it works responsibly, multi-generationally. So to jump in the first one, building a family banking, I'm going to set the stage here for a second, and I'll let you bring some ideas to the conversation, Wade. But, this conversation is a conversation that we call stage 4 conversation. The stages of ownership of life insurance is a progression we set in our education when we bring new relationships into our community. Not two people that we call investors are the same. Some might be buying single family residence, the other people are buying commercial buildings in New York. Both call investors, they're doing it at a different level. Not everyone that owns life insurance does it at the same level. Some people use it for initial savings. Some people may pair their foundational asset like life insurance with their investments or their debt. Some people bring it as a business, and ultimately some people want to embed that into every single piece of their financial life. My wife and I, for example, cannot have a conversation about money without using the word policy. It is so ingrained in our family that we cannot have discussions around money without talking about our whole life portfolio. When we talk to our children, they have these transparent piggy banks that are the temporary holding for their savings. But when we open those piggy banks, the conversation, the education with a 4-year-old that is just learning basic communication is this: the portion that we save will move to your policy, and then we'll have a portion that you can spend and another portion that you may donate. We are using very basic principles like the path of money in Tough Money. If you've never seen this conversation, the premise is you can only do 4 things with cash or cash flow. You can spend it, donate it, hold it for liquidity, or invest it. And with my little boy, we are just starting that conversation so he grows in a paradigm where this is a normal way to see money. Bringing family banking. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it is. It's a proper sequence as well. I think that's why I think a lot of people feel this idea of financial pressure is like they get the sequence out of line. And I've talked to a number of real estate investors, and we'll pick on real estate investors today because of this, because they've earned money and they go, okay, I got money from whatever source. And then they dump it all into real estate. And it creates a lot of pressure because now they're beholden to somebody else. Or they finance it to the max and they're letting their income pay for the payment on that. So the idea is that if we have the proper sequence, we're going to eliminate that financial pressure. And the proper sequence is going from savings to investment, not investments to savings. And it might seem small, but it's huge in that sense, because if you're doing it in the proper sequence, this is how you're creating a family banking business. Because you think about just any bank in general, it needs money before it can make a loan. Well, people have got that reversed. They've been taking loans when they don't have any money. So now they're beholding to Wells Fargo, whoever else, versus if we have money, now we're beholding to ourselves because we've created our own banking business.
Yes. So I love that thought. And to bring it all together again for the stage as we go deeper into the actual what the island looks like, what this outcome really looks like for us. One of the assumptions we're going to make, if you're new to this conversation, if you're new to Wake's community, is we use whole life insurance as the main asset to hold long-term liquidity for our families, for our business. We already have the conviction and the confidence that there's no better asset, there's no tougher asset to do this than whole life insurance. So if you don't accept or embrace that premise, we invite you to go through our education and understand why the banks are the largest purchasers of life insurance in the country. Why do we see football coaches getting compensation with life insurance policies? Why do we see CEOs across the country in the top 3% executives getting deferred compensation through life insurance policies? Why the SEC chair just appointed this year owns 54 life insurance policies worth over $30 million or 10% of his net worth, being the top chief and regulator of securities in the country. I'm just saying this is something that is embedded in the larger wealthy society as an asset where we hold liquidity, but because it's private, most of us don't know about it.
Yeah.
So that's one premise. This is what we use to hold our liquidity. And then from a tough money perspective, and I'll let you take it from here, there is when we have cash flow come in, we must be thoughtful about how much we keep in savings. So we must control our P&L, profit loss, our spending, our donations, and what we keep moves into our balance sheet. Most people send that immediately to investments, a retirement account, equity in their home, and they hold no liquidity, which is what protects you in times of events or gives you opportunity to take advantage of deals when they present themselves. This conversation uses two premises. We believe the best place to hold this liquidity is whole life insurance for many reasons. If you want more education, we'll be happy to help you. And then we bring these principles and the proper sequencing into the family to bring it to every single member. So as a family, we can concentrate capital and we can create interdependence.
I love that idea of interdependence. I think I've shared this before too. When my son graduated, the guest speaker at his high school graduation was talking about being independent. My mind was like, he's got it wrong. We should be teaching our kids to be interdependent with the family, which means we all grow. A dependence is kind of a one-way street. There's a power dynamic there, but an interdependent means hey, we're both growing and we're both doing well. And so that's really what we teach in this whole idea of family banking business. It's like you are in the banking business. Nelson said that right at the beginning of his book that both you and I have in the background. It's like we're all in the banking business if we know it or not. If we don't know it, we're being taken advantage of by the banks. If we do know it, it gives us the opportunity now to go create our own family banking business. And so one of the things, just some interesting stories about the banking business is like when you have dollars available and held in the right location, that's getting all these other benefits. And you can listen to the other podcasts where we talk about the 8 benefits of holding your life insurance policy. Once it's there, then the opportunities do find you, or it gives you the opportunity to go out and find those great opportunities because now you have a structure around how do I lend money? You've got rules set aside because you're in a business. Once you start treating it like a business, looking at profit and loss of all your transactions, that's when you're really going to start. And it doesn't have to be complicated, by the way. But once you start seeing that, you're going to go, oh, I get it now. And this is truly how what they call money at work for you, because now you're not having to put in hours, exchange hours for dollars. You're changing dollars for more dollars is kind of the way to look at it. And again, in our family, we keep it as simple as possible. We don't have to make it complicated. I know there's some people that want to make it complicated because they like the complexity of doing a lot more. I'm a simple guy, so I just keep it simple.
When I started this conversation, when I coach clients, when I guide people to implement this, a lot of people want to rush into the numbers. A lot of people want to rush to the dollars and cents. And obviously that's the impulse. But I tell them, there is a set of ideas here. There's a set of values that make this a stage 4 conversation.
Yeah.
This is not just now a mathematical conversation. This is a conversation around how are we going to set the rules, the intention for what we want to manifest as a family, 10, 20, 30, 40, actually multi-generationally. So I start with a set of principles for me, Wade. to build around, from my experience at least, the conversation. I tell people, my wife and I did this initially because we wanted to set a proper foundation that we didn't have when we were following the traditional financial plan. We were both professionals in corporate America. My wife was in the medical field and we earned six figures. And although we were contributing to retirement plans and we're doing things like that, we own insurances, it didn't feel like it was creating impact in the way our cash flow and our liquidity was positioning us to have peace of mind. We felt financial stress. As a matter of fact, I felt financial stress because I couldn't see a path to increasing my income fast enough to afford a family, which is a very tough realization for a young, late 20s to early 30s young man, right? And a lot of my friends share some of those reservations. We don't talk about it as men, but we're expected to be leaders in our families to provide. And although we feel like we're doing all these things right and we're earning decent incomes, it doesn't feel like there's a path to clearly say, oh yeah, I will be able to pay for schools and things like that. We did this initially to bring strength to our financial foundation, to have control of cash flow so we could launch a family with confidence. But what emerged from this was that we started to think abundantly and see a path where we were going to create additional cash flow and we're going to go into business. And as that abundance is created, we needed to be very mindful that the values in our family were not to prepare money for our children, and they were to prepare our children for money. It's a very different paradigm there, right? I see a world where I know God will tell my children already in their heart who they're meant to be, and they need to unfold that. But in addition to that, they have the responsibilities of being private bankers for the Zapata family and stewards for the blessings for the next generation.
Boy, that's a real key. What are we doing to provide a treasure for our children's children? And it's not just money. Quite frankly, the money is the least important part of it. It's the education and knowledge. That's the treasure. In my thought, is like, what, to your point, what are we doing to prepare the children, and then giving them the tools to prepare their children. I think that's the real key. And that's we've had conversations with clients too. We've taken this to their family and help educate their children, and maybe their children's children as well. And
Yes.
boy, that brings a family together around money. And if you don't do that, I think there's an opportunity where money can separate a family real easy. So you have a choice. Do you want to bring your family together around money, or do you want to have it separated?
And think about the extremes. This is very tangible for me because I have a 4 and a 2-year-old, right? So my 2-year-old is very dependent from us, everything, changing diapers, food, right? We are in a stage of dependency. And with my 4-year-old, we're working on a stage of independence. You are potty trained, go and change yourself. Let's make sure you put your plate away, right? Like we're working on those skills. But as we move forward through these stages, I can see why interdependence is so powerful, because these two things over the long term are extremes. I don't want a completely dependent 30-year-old living with us.
Right.
I also don't want a 30-year-old that never calls me and is completely independent and never comes to see the family, right? Those two extremes are not the outcome my wife and I are seeking. In the middle, there's interdependence. Capable adults responsible with good values that love and want to come hang out with me and Sarah, right? That see the family as a unit. So how do we create interdependence? I can tell you, I work with a lot of clients that have a distant relationship with their children, and independence is interesting because as we create a Chinese wall, oh, they are now in college. What's the expression? When you're alone at home. Sorry, I
Empty
forget the
nester.
word.
Empty
Empty
nester.
nesters. Thank you very much. We push the kids, and it's a celebration in our culture. But if we don't do that properly, we are going to push our children then to go learn lessons in life, particularly around money, from Chase, Wells Fargo, right? From Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Chase may have New York values that do not match the values of my family. They may not have the best interest that I have in my children. So all this idea of interdependence is important, and it starts as soon as possible. I have the blessing to have younger children. You have the same, but we also work with a lot of families in real life, week to week, where we meet with parents, with teenage sons or daughters, with 20-something-year-old kids, even families of adult children. And we reframe the conversation around, hey, whatever we've been doing before, perhaps there's a better way by bringing everyone together, and the idea that if we capitalize each other with the productivity of our incomes and we concentrate that money, what if we could be the source to finance the next wedding, the next home purchase, the next vehicle, the next business launch? to keep the wealth concentrated. We hear this, it sounds loving, but we forget that this is real for wealthy families across the country, multi-generation. I think, I don't know factually, again, because of the privacy, but the legend is that Rockefellers are in generation six, supporting 200 Rockefellers living through the income of the trusts. And it's all supported by concentrating that money in properly store and proper storage environments like life insurance to protect the capital of each individual, human capital, and to protect the wealth of the family. So at the you and me level, you are engaging with your family in this practice. I'm engaging in me, regardless of our level of wealth, regardless of the number of members of our family. It's a first mindset values conversation that we put into the right processes that then we deploy with the right products or assets.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. I know we spent quite a bit of time on this, but it's so important is that you are developing the Zapata family bank. I'm going to give you just a real quick example. I had a client, he had a farming operation, and one son was really good with their grain operation. The daughter was really good with cattle. The one son didn't have affinity for either one. But where they found value to bring the whole family together is like he was good with the numbers, and he was quote unquote the banker. So they would get together and have their annual meetings or their meetings on a monthly basis around coffee, but they were intentional about it and saying, okay, how's this operation running? How's this operation running? How's the finances running? So by having the policies in place, because we're protecting the capital of all those key elements, and we'll talk about those down the road, he could bring his expertise, and he found his niche in the family by saying, hey, I'm the person that can help finance everything we're going to do on the farm. They saw him is more valued than they had ever seen him in the past. So I think there's a real opportunity to bring everybody in the family around that idea, but everybody has to buy into it too, right? So we all have to find a set of rules. Like you said, the Rockefellers, they have a set of rules set out there. It's like, hey, this is what's going to happen. You want to borrow money? Because again, you have to treat it like a business.
Yeah.
If you don't treat it like a business, then it's going to act like a business that's not being treated very well. So I think there's, that's just one example, but there could be 100 different examples. We've had some children that are very, their interest in talking about money is like way off the scale. They would love to talk about it. Some don't want to have any conversation, but they have a need for money. Everybody in the family has a need for money. So let people lead that where they want to lead, and then those that need access to it, lay out the ground rules and do it up front, and it becomes a way to unify the family instead of separate it out. So
Yeah. Well, this is the perfect transition, I think, to topic number
yeah.
two. This is a conversation and a set of rules. People sometimes hear me talk about this and they think I'm crazy because my kids are 2 and 4. What they don't see is that I am subconsciously planting on me, my wife, and our kids a set of rules conversation that will be the normal in the next 10, 20 years when my kids now are adults and they're leaders in the conversation.
Yeah.
I do not want to unlearn and relearn things. So I'm starting with a point where this is how we talk in our family. So, for example, this is not an equal outcome conversation for us in our family. No right or wrong. This is an equal opportunity. But if one of my kids earns more income than the other and participates in a more meaningful way in the banking system, they'll have access to more meaningful amounts of money because it's an equal opportunity, not equal outcome. It's a responsibility conversation and an honor conversation, not we're just preparing money for the kids, not kids for the money. That's one thing. If there's issues with drugs, alcohol abuse, there's issues in their marriage, all those things will affect their relationship with the family, which will affect their relationship with the banking system. So on that side, the rules, but in the brighter side of how do we engage this in a meaningful way. The second topic I have proposed to you for conversation is how do we keep $1 million in the control of the family when financing vehicles? And we use vehicles not because we're excited to purchase cars necessarily. It's because, not everyone is at a stage of life where they've had the opportunity to make investments, buying real estate or equities or buying a business. But most Americans, based on how our society works, unless you're in a metropolis where public transportation is the main form of transportation, most Americans will use vehicles to move across the country. As a matter of fact, the statistic is most Americans will use 13 vehicles in their lifetime, and that the amount of payments that would represent would be around $400,000 in average for every American, just financing vehicles and transportation weight. So the connection here that we should make is, okay, we are saying as leaders in our families that we need to create a family bank and a pool of private capital we can use. And one of the options we could have would be to finance the need for transportation or vehicles in our family, with our kids, with ourselves, or people around us. So that I think is a very important application we're going to discuss. And I want to put one more layer to this. I hear from some clients to say, I really don't want to leave a bunch of money to my kids. I want the kids to struggle. And because from that struggle, that's where the hard work and the values will come. And there's no right or wrong to that. But I want to put that little seed in the conversation because I want to start painting the picture that as we use this family banking, there's a way to create cogeneration. There's ways to bring benefit to the parents, benefit to the children, and create interdependence. So any thoughts through that as we talk through it?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff there. One of the things, you're right. I've heard that people say that as I don't want to leave. Well, that's because they don't see value in doing that. The parents are like, why do I want to sacrifice for my kids to have money? If you understood what you're saying and what we're really trying to get at, you'll say, how is by doing this benefiting me and then also benefiting my children at the same time? And if you can both benefit, then the question is, why wouldn't you want to do it? Why wouldn't you want to have both parties in your family, you as a parent and them as the children, both benefit from this transaction? And I think that's the key is like you have to, most people say, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? Well, what's in it for me is the fact that, and again, we have a ton of content to go over this, and we have some really good videos showing this. What's in it for me is a positive cash flow by lending the money to my children to buy vehicles. The benefit to them is that they have a friendly environment to borrow money from. And that money flows back to an entity that they will eventually take over and reap the benefits of those interest payments going back to the Zapata family bank, for example. Your kids, if they understand what's going on, they're going to be excited to make those payments.
Yes. So let's go and connect the principles. This conversation to me connects directly with Tough Money because most Americans, 90% of Americans, finance vehicle purchases two ways, either through cash from their savings or through debt, and third-party debt. This goes directly to the Tough Money savings strategy, how to properly create an amount of cash, and then savings environment, how to make sure that cash that we store in terms of liquidity is in the proper environment that maximizes your benefits. Because what people miss in this part of the conversation is that if you're just using cash to make large purchases, all you're trying to do is avoid paying interest to a third party. But the part you miss is that there's an opportunity cost to that cash. You will not earn a dime in the future on that cash that you transfer to that dealer, to that person that sells you a vehicle, for example. So how do we solve that? We need to go back to the principles of properly storage environments, properly savings environments to avoid that opportunity cost. On the flip side, if you use a bank loan or financing from a dealership, right, and you use debt, understanding the terms of this debt and how we source debt, particularly consumer debt, is important. So when you can store your capital in a way where you can guarantee that money and that the interest rates are very favorable compared to the other interest rates that you will see in other loan terms, you start to understand the power of having whole life be the place to store this money to finance this purchase. The moment your children have this education and understand how interdependence works, they will be happy to go to mom and dad to finance this versus Wells Fargo and Chase and Bank of America, because in any circumstance in a family that launches in this venture, likely there'll be a set of values where I'd be treated better, I'd be educated, I'm going to learn through this experience. And as I contribute to it by paying interest from my own income, I also see the value of contributing to a pool of money that over time will be my responsibility to steward when those death benefits come and I continue to be the leader moving that forward. Yeah. It's a very interconnected conversation. And I'll just say one more thing, really quick punchline. To going back to that cash or debt, whether we pay interest on the loans of the car loans, the vehicle loans, or we just pay with cash and we give up that opportunity, the biggest realization comes when people see that out of $400,000 of a lifetime of vehicles purchase, we could have earned $1.5 million in interest on that amount of money over the lifetime of that individual. That's $1 million opportunity cost per person in your family for vehicles only. That's one financial decision in your life. What can a parent at retirement or in stages when they want more cash flow do as they receive interest payments from a cash flow or income perspective when they're no longer working? Would a child be happy to contribute to the opportunity to their parents to have financial stability and income by contributing to the family and interdependence of a system that will reward them later with the guarantee that the money will come back to them?
Yeah, I think, boy, that's a powerful statement. So I'm just going to rephrase that in kind of my terms. And because how I see that is, again, you use the word opportunity cost. People may or may not understand what that is, but it's the idea, it's either you pay up interest or you give up interest. I think that's really what opportunity cost is. Like if I'm going to spend my money on a new truck, I don't want a Ford Dodge or whatever, but you're buying a vehicle and you transfer that money to the Ford dealership. And then the Ford dealership, they prosper off those dollars. But that money's out of your environment. And again, the idea here is that we're creating a closed economic environment where the money will stay and rotate within your life and within your family for the rest of your life and hopefully the rest of, for your 3, 4, 5, 6 generations like the Rockefellers have done. That's really what they've done. They've closed their economic environment, ecosystem as it were, to hold those dollars. This happens in a lot of different communities. And when people start to understand that, then because they start to see the benefit of it. So what we're saying is that do you want to transfer those dollars away or do you want to keep them? And that's really what the conversation is. Now, if you keep them, we have to understand that we're spending money. So then therefore we have to refill the tank. Because we still have to transfer the money away to the Ford dealership to buy that truck or the GM dealership to buy that truck. But we're willing to make a payment back to Wells Fargo. So therefore, why aren't we willing to make that back to our own ecosystem?
Which again now connects with point number three, which is very aligned with this. Where do we source debt? Why do we talk about things like policy loans, for example, to be a pristine source of debt based on the control of the terms? I would even bring into this, the idea of how banks make money to relate the banking profits to relate it to family and the idea of growing wealth as a family from interdependence. So I'll tell you, I received a very nice text message a couple of days ago from a very proud father who has a system of policy for his children, and the oldest children just received a transfer of his policy to be the steward of that policy. And there was a set of circumstances. He needed some cash to avoid. It was an accident. He needed to pay an accident, and he didn't want to increase the premiums on his auto insurance, so he decided to pay it out of pocket. But the instinct from the son was, I'm going to use my policy to finance this, and I will create a plan to replenish that money, so I don't have an opportunity cost on that money. Plus, I don't increase my premiums for my auto insurance forever. Realization there, small application, but the message from the dad said, I can see how this concept, this idea is now becoming the mindset in my family through this example. And it was really exciting to hear this because there is now an interdependence being generated that is beyond the dollars. The money was not the conversation. The conversation was, where do we source debt? Why do we do this? I'm going to put more premium into it so I can do this, because this is how, as a family, we concentrate capital. That is the connection between financing things like, things related to vehicles, family banking, and now why do we borrow from this policy? And this is, again, if you've never heard of this benefit, is the ability to exercise the flexible loan provision in the life insurance contract that provides two things: a guaranteed line of credit. I'm going to say that again, a guaranteed line of credit, access to our cash values with an unstructured loan, meaning we are the loan officers. We control how we amortize those loans and repay those loans to the family banking system. What do you think about that?
Well, 100% agree. The unstructured loan and the fact that you control the terms helps you overcome a lot of unforeseens. And I've shared this story with a lot of people. I've done podcasts on this, but when we bought a piece of property, rental property, it all looked good on paper. We bought it; it was all going fine until it didn't. And then the tenant blew up. I say blew up. Punched holes in the walls, tore off doors. It's like, wow, where did that come from? But anyhow, it's like, man, we need to restructure this loan. Oh, we're the bankers of this thing. So we did interest only for a year. What institution would give you that flexibility? When we put it back a ways to start to cash flow better. So when we own that, that's a whole different story. Another conversation that comes up quite often is people will concentrate on the wrong things. And I don't mean the wrong things because that's assuming there's a right way. But they have, again, it goes back to sequence. They put importance on areas that maybe aren't as important. And they get caught up like, oh, is this a 5% loan or is this a 5.25% loan? I can get 5.25 at the bank, or I can get 5 at the bank. Now, in today's environment, that conversation doesn't come up as often as it used to. But back 3 years ago, when interest rates were down to zero, it did a lot more. But I think the point that they missed, the more important point, because there's not a really way to put it on a spreadsheet, is who's got control. Whoever controls the financing is the person that owns that asset. Think about that for a second. You own your money, then you're the one that can say, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it. If you're managing it, then you got to play by somebody else's set of rules. So the control to me is like the most important part of it. But I think there's a lot of people that want to get caught up in the minutia of the percentages. Oh, this rate versus this rate. And I don't want to say squabbling over 1/4% or 0.5%, because it's important. Those numbers are always important. But the more important part is that when you're controlling it, then you get to set the terms, and you're the one that says yes or no. You're not waiting for somebody else. And what would you be willing to give up to have that type of control, David? That's the real key, is like, what are you willing to give up to have that type of control?
Yeah. I think what you just said there is really important. I'll tell you how I address this conversation in real conversation with clients, because I think it's really critical here to understand, to get out of the mainstream, even the social media messaging of like, oh, life insurance or infinite banking is it's a game of just creating a spread. You're just going to leverage a life insurance policy and go. That is not at all what we're talking about. And if you hear that, please seek a professional. Those are just people marketing something that they don't understand. But the conversation that you are bringing here, and I'm going to give context to the new community members, is this: in that flexible loan provision, the line of credit is guaranteed. It's an unstructured loan. So if it's 5%, you're right, Wade. Three years ago, before 2022, people thought we were crazy. Why would I borrow money at 5% when I can get loans at 3% for 30 years to buy? And you're right. Now people look at us and we're geniuses. Oh my God, you guys can borrow money at 5% when I can only borrow money at 7, 8, 9, 10. And that is not the conversation, unfortunately. But if you're working with a professional like Wade, you need to zoom out. He'll help you zoom out and realize, hey, what if the interest rate is a small component and is not the conversation? The conversation here is this. In my family, I think about this. What would happen if Benjamin now, would I have the flexibility as the loan officer to give him a time to recover, to treat the interest on a loan as interest only, to do a balloon? I have the flexibility now to decide how to amortize loans. Very powerful. Nobody in the insurance company will be calling me asking me when payments are coming in.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Not a big deal if it's $10,000, but if you have a capital in your family of 2, 3, 5, $10 million, and you have that flexibility, how strong, how tough is your family now? The exciting outcome is not even that. Let me take it a step further. What if Benjamin becomes, or my other son become, really go-getter entrepreneurs, and they go find deals and opportunities that I cannot even see myself, and they bring me the $1 million building that is selling for $400,000? Would I want as a dad to be in a position to say, son, amazing, congratulations, guess what? Our family is really tough, in a position to take advantage of that opportunity. Let's partner together, let's grow. That's the outcome that I am really thinking of here. I don't know what my kids will be, but the moment they found an opportunity, Sarah and I will be ready to back them up, because our family will be tough through our family banking system.
And
that comes from that flexibility.
The flexibility. And again, it's about you being the owner of your money versus being the manager. The manager doesn't have that flexibility to say, hey, Benjamin, sorry you got in that accident. I know you're laid up for the next 6 months. Let's do nothing. Let's defer the interest and the payments for a year until you get back on your feet. When you own that money, you have that ability. When you're just managing that money, or you have Wells Fargo, some loan officer that's a manager at Wells Fargo doing it, they're going to say, I got a set of rules and I have no flexibility. So being the owner, again, the interdependence is that. But at the end of the day, you still want that business, that banking business, the family banking business, to be profitable. You're not a charity. You're not a nonprofit. You want it to be profitable. So you want to treat it as profitable, but you also want to, bring that sense of family compassion. There's like, hey, there's something going on here. We can adjust for it because we own that asset.
Yeah. So, well, this is the perfect time to bring the last point, and we can close with this one. Charitable donations. So we've talked about family banking while leaving being strong family, setting values, mindset, and processes and products for the long-term wealth and multi-generational wealth transfer of the family. We talked about financing large purchases, sourcing debt, most of the times. And I'll tell you, in our family, we talk about two purposes of money. Money has the first purpose to make our family more comfortable, and the second purpose to bless the lives of people beyond our physical presence, people that we may not even know and have around us that we can still touch and impact. Part of our family banking system also has a certain purpose to help people in need or people with potential or things that we want to promote and create incentives for. My story, I come from Colombia, so I have a lot of sensitivity, even in my family, for people that have need. So in the present, we use a lot of our policies and policy loans to support family members, quite honestly, when they're in need, to support them with income needs, with things like that. And that is a now conversation. But in the future, Sarah and I, my mother passed away when I was 15. I have a lot of sensitivity for families that have caregivers that support a child with cancer in a children's hospital or parents that are dying. It's a reality that we all are touched by. You and I are touched by. So in our mind, we want to let those parents at a children's hospital with a kid sick know that there's other people that love them, that think of them. So if we can use our policy loans or even our death benefits to create an endowment or to support nights in a hotel for families that go and travel to a new city to take a child to a hospital, it would be a meaningful way for us to use the wealth we created while living in a portion of our legacy to tell other people we love them.
I think that's a really good point, David, is that it's not always just today's giving. And again, we have a lot of content that can talk about giving today and how do you run that giving through your policy. Again, it's the sequence of the dollars. But more importantly, how do you continue that giving? Because if you think about what we just talked about, like this this entity that's going to go on, it's going to be this Zapata family bank or this Zapata family legacy. And it's like, how do I make that gift go on even when you're not here to give that gift anymore? And that's through the other power of, that's the other part of that liquidity contract called life insurance, is that at the time that you die, it endows it. It creates this idea of like, hey, I'm going to continue what felt good in my heart. I'm going to continue that because I know it's important to other people. And you can do that through the death benefit. That's a death benefit conversation. And we can also do it and maximize it through the living benefits of whole life insurance. Both benefits are liquidity contracts. You're providing liquidity or cash to an organization that needs it today, but they also need it in the future. I've talked to a lot of churches and they're always nervous about looking far into the future because they need cash today to keep the lights on. But what if you could do both? Think about that. What if I could say, hey, I'm going to have a plan to give on an ongoing basis, and when I die, I'll leave a legacy as well. Boy, isn't that powerful?
Yeah. So I think we've discussed really powerful ideas. To give a tease to everyone watching the next couple of episodes, we're going to bring this similar format to a couple of conversations around business banking and business conversations, including investments. So how do we pair this tough money ideas with infinite banking for your investments in your business? And then in the subsequent episode, we'll talk about some critical conversations we see today, like retirement, college financing, and annual expenses and how they connect in our framework. So Wade, thank you for having me today.
You bet. I'm just one more quick plug. If you want to get a hold of David, it's David at factumfinancial.com. You can reach out to me. The contact information will be in the show notes. But just so you know, again, we want to bring some ideas around this conversation. Like, how does this apply to you and how does it apply in your world? But just know, like, even with the family banking conversation, the family banking business, we have a roadmap for that. So there's material we can provide you, like some thoughtful. It's not going to be your roadmap because you have to create it, but we can definitely give you the framework of saying, what are some things we got to think about? What are some ideas to help bring the rest of the family together? We do that through the Factum Tough Money conversations that we have, but we also have documentation to help you with some of the things that maybe you hadn't thought about. We have the ability to, through a couple of calculators and some education videos showing how just by financing vehicles in your family that you can keep that dollars within your family. And then again, we have some ideas about how do you source money and how do you treat your money as if you were a banker. So we have some thoughts and some documentation around that as well. The charitable contributions, again, we got documents and we also have videos to help you understand because it's about awareness, it's about education, and it's a lot, how are we empowering you to take action to serve your family and become that leader that you deserve. So Again, David, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. This gets me really excited. I love talking about different ideas, how we can use our policies and put them into action. So again, thank you so much. I look forward to the next time we're able to do this.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for joining me today. Remember, small shifts lead to lasting change. Keep thinking differently, keep moving forward, and we'll see you next time.